Thank you for joining us on The Briefing, your weekly debrief of top news by the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com. I'm Rafael Carranza. This week we're coming to you from Tucson, the heart of Arizona's borderlands, where we met with a man responsible of enforcement over this large area. Here are the top 3 things that you need to know to understand what is currently happening at the Arizona border as it once again gains prominence this election cycle. The Tucson sector, which covers the eastern 2/3 of the Arizona border, continues to lead the country in the number of migrant encounters. Unofficial stats for March show agents here apprehended nearly 39,000 migrants, or about 1,200 per day. Weekly apprehensions have begun to decrease, but we don't know if that will hold during the summer when numbers peak historically. Nonprofits and local governments are continuing to coordinate with border officials to provide humanitarian aid to migrants released at the Arizona border. They faced a March 31st fiscal cliff when federal money was expected to run out, but DHS assured that more money is coming to Arizona. That has allowed them to continue providing services like shelter, food, and transportation uninterrupted. As local governments respond at the border, state leaders are at odds about how to address this issue. After Governor Hobbs vetoed the Arizona Border Invasion Act, House Speaker Ben Toma has championed a concurrent resolution that mandates the use of E-Verify to receive state benefits. The goal is to get it into voters in November, but it's stalled in the Senate. President Warren Peterson says it has unresolved issues. For more coverage of immigration and border issues across Arizona and at the southwest border, visit azcentral.com or follow us on social media. Last month, Congress averted a government shutdown. It passed a series of spending bills. That includes $1.2 trillion for the Department of Homeland Security to step up border and immigration enforcement. The 2024 spending bill for the Department of Homeland Security allocates about $19.6 billion to Customs and Border Protection and nearly $9.6 billion to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Some of the funding highlights include $650 million for the Shelter and Services Program, which reimburses local governments and nonprofits for providing humanitarian assistance to migrants and asylum seekers released in the U.S. after crossing the border. An increase in ICE detention capacity with enough funding to raise the number of detention beds from 34,000 currently to 41,500. The bill also funds more than 2,100 new Border Patrol agents, bringing up the total to 22,000. It also includes overtime pay for agents. $491 million will also pay for specialized equipment at the border crossings to scan and seize fentanyl and other hard drugs.
What I'm calling now on the federal government to do is to disperse these funds as quickly as possible back into the sectors so that they can go to work on the field here and continue their efforts to protect our border.
This past week, we sat down with John Maudlin. He is the chief patrol agent for the Tucson sector. We discussed what lessons his agents learned during a major increase in crossings last year that culminated with the closure of the Lookville port of entry.
2018, 2019, 2020, we saw about 60,000 apprehensions a year, which is a lot for a sector this size, but it was certainly manageable. And then in 2021, it jumped to 190,000. And then it jumped to 250,000 in 2022. And then last year, 373,000. But when it comes to how people migrate through Mexico into the United States, it's all controlled by the smuggling organizations. So people don't really have a choice along the route to sort of go east or west. It's all determined based on who they are, but also violence in Mexico will change migration patterns as well, and especially if there's violence against migrants, that will move migration patterns as well. So a whole lot of things affect it, certainly not just a single cause. To me, the thing that affected us the most here, and still is affecting us the most, is that where the smuggling organizations are moving these people are the most remote areas that we have. You talked about the West Desert. So the farthest west parts of our area, way out west in west of Ajo, very desolate out there. There's no infrastructure out there. And these people are being pushed across the border into areas where it'll take us hours to get from the nearest paved road to them. So, if you think about a group of 100 migrants shows up at once out there, there's no four-wheel buses for us to drive out there. We have to get out there in trucks and triage that group and then determine who's the most vulnerable of all those vulnerable populations and get those out, maybe 4 or 5 at a time, and get them again in an hour or two drive back to some paved street where there can be a bus waiting to move them out. So it's incredibly callous and inconsiderate of the life and the safety of those people that the smuggling organizations are pushing through in those areas. And while that's happening, probably most importantly, we are not able to focus on our mission, which is securing the border, which is preventing dangerous people and dangerous things from getting into the United States. We are focusing on triaging these groups, providing care for these groups while we're not doing our traditional mission.
How do you determine who you will release and who will be, for example, placed in detention or removed?
Yeah, sure. So every day when we make when we make all of our apprehensions, a certain percentage of those people have significant criminal history in the United States already. They've committed felonies here. They've been removed from the United States, or they left voluntarily and now they're coming back. So those people are going to go into the custody of the U.S. Marshals Service. We're going to prosecute those people. If it's someone that's involved in a smuggling scheme, they're going to be prosecuted as well. There's a percentage of the people that are interdicted that are unaccompanied children. By law, they need to go into the custody of HHS, so that they go that way. And what we're left with is this other population that we refer to ICE ERO for custody. With the population that's left over, some of them will go laterally, sort of east and west, to sectors that have the capacity to hear those fear claims while they're in custody in those sectors. And then that population that's left, if there's nothing else for us to do to them or do with them, they then have to be released. I don't have any authority to continue to hold them. So we release them in coordination with NGOs, and with the idea being to try to mitigate the impact to the city of Tucson or Nogales or Douglas as much as we can.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The Arizona Republic. Here for it. Are you?
For this week's Sunspot, we are traveling to the White House with an elementary school district band from Tucson that represented Arizona. This past weekend, Los Tigres de Tucson, a mariachi band from the Tucson Elementary School District, traveled to Washington, D.C. They played at the White House for the annual Easter egg roll. The band is led by Efrain Casillas, who was recognized as the 2024 Teacher of the Year. While in D.C., the students also visited the Capitol building and other monuments in the nation's capital. Thank you for joining us on The Briefing, your weekly debrief of top news by the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com. We'll see you next time.